Hi, Salika here for Peak Survival. I've been recently reading about Ernest Shackleton's expedition with the Endeavour in a book called Shackleton's Way. And despite experiencing multiple disasters, he didn't stop displaying exceptional leadership, courage, confidence, and resiliency. It's just utterly amazing what he was able to overcome. With me today is Tor A. Rain, who has a master's in cross-cultural psychology, a first aid for feelings trainer, and a pain and fatigue specialist at the Helpful Clinic. Today, we're going to review why some people are more resilient than others. So Thor, welcome back. Thanks for joining us again at Peak Survival. I'm incredibly fascinated by why some people can navigate life more smoothly and are more resilient than others. So you want to take us through this?
Absolutely. And yeah, thanks for having me, Salika. I mean, this is my day job. So I often think it's interesting when people see resilience as something that you either have or you don't. Whereas as far as I can tell, after my years in this business, is that resilience is a question of training. Those of us who are more resilient are almost certainly more resilient because we've had training. We've been through situations either by choice or that we've just found ourselves in situations where we had to develop skills and not just develop them, but practice them. And I often say, I mean, one of my favorite sort of metaphors is that you don't learn to swim by watching a documentary. It's just that simple. You can be reading all the survival manuals in the world and you can have the most gorgeous kit. But if you don't actually get out there onto the mountain, or if you don't get into the woods and actually try and chop down a tree, you can be polishing and sharpening that axe till the cows come home, nothing's going to happen.
Exactly.
Resilient is all about doing. And I think that's something that really getting that message across, because often we feel like, well, if I'm not resilient, I just have to accept that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
Yeah,
like,
I've seen
I don't
that.
think so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But because we often talk about it as some sort of a God-given talent,
Mm-hmm.
that if we feel we don't have it, then of course it's going to be sort of a bit frightening or overwhelming, or we try and just smooth over with a bit of bravado.
Mm-hmm.
So really getting a sense of resilience is something that we develop. It's like going to the gym to, build your biceps. It's pretty much the same mechanism. And that there are certain components to building resilience. Resilience isn't some sort of foofy, I don't know, candy floss thing.
Yeah.
Resilience is very hardcore, to the point, straight on it.
Yeah, I mean, I have some friends that like, oh, I wish I could be, like you. And I go, I wasn't just born resilient. I didn't come into this world going, hello world, bring it on. I said I did 3 months of hiking on the Appalachian Trail. I am constantly going on adventures where things go wrong, and through building those skill set and the tolerance. When I navigate maybe, what I deem now are easier challenges, they go, how come you didn't get stressed by that? I go, oh, honey, that was not stressful. Let me tell you stress.
Exactly.
So it is, it's practice. It's a skill set.
Absolutely. And I think also we often think that, when bad things happen, that's, I mean, clearly that it can be terrible and traumatic, but also it's also offers us a unique opportunity to really get a sense of our true strength.
Mm-hmm.
I think me personally, I've been in situations where at the beginning I was like, I have no idea whether I'm going to come out of this alive.
Mm-hmm.
And then actually having come through it, there's a bit like, wow, I'm stronger than I realize.
Yeah.
And sometimes we need reminding of that, or sometimes we need to kind of, sometimes we step out of our comfort zone by choice. Sometimes we get thrust out of our comfort zone, and then we realize, hang on a minute, my capacity is way bigger than I ever imagined, which then means that when things come along, it's like when you lift your first, 100 pounds, you're like, yeah, but by the time you're lifting 400, you can do, 100 just by, one arm. So it is that sense of practice and skill. And I think this is also where it comes to building resilience isn't something that's just for the select few. There are some very straightforward principles to put in place here. So in terms of resilience, the sort of two key things are structure and practice. There needs to be a structure to your training, and then you need to practice it. Come again to the whole swimming, learning, actually by getting into the water. So getting a sense of what are the habits that we're going to put in place to make sure we're training the skills that we want to be training. Mm-hmm. So it's also about making choices. Some of the skills, I mean, I don't know, if I put my work into it, I might be brilliant at playing the violin. but I really not, because I didn't choose to practice that skill set.
Sure.
You know, there are other things that I'm much better at because I made a choice, or I was presented with situations in life that actually sort of guided in a certain direction where I've built certain types of skills. So getting a sense of, for survival, you know, there are certain things that we need to do. We need to practice our skills just in physical fitness and strength. We need to learn how to, you know, use our kit. I remember, all of my 20s, I was quite a lot into target practice. So, you know, got a 22 caliber, very, very smooth little rifle. I had to learn how to use it. And of course, the first time I was loading it, I was like a bit clunky, or the first time I was cleaning it, it took a while. You know, 10 years later, I'm like, practically do that with one hand, you know, and anybody who's had to figure out kit and how to use it or how to assemble parts will know that the only way to get slick and smooth at it is by practicing. So getting a sense of what are some of the skills that you want to build, and then how are you going to do it? What's the training program that you want to put in place for yourself? And so once you've got the training program, you've got the kind of structure of it, then it's about the practicing of it. So, I mean, when I put it like that, how does that sound? Any questions on that, Salika, that you spot?
Well, no, actually, it makes perfect sense. I mean, you know, in my videos, I talk a lot about taking care of your kit. You know, you can have your knife or your gun or your bow, but you know, if you have these tools at your disposal, but A, you haven't taken care of them, so when the time comes to use them, they're not working properly. Or, you know, B, you have this beautiful kit untouched and you have no clue how to use it. In a survival situation, it doesn't, you know, okay, yeah, you have the kit, but you're gonna struggle, you know. So but something that actually I want to touch upon, which is I've experienced, and I guess it can translate, you know, very well into what we're talking about in terms of resiliency and exposing yourself to discomfort and not being afraid to lean into discomfort. Sometimes we lean into it to develop that skill. Sometimes it's thrust upon us. And when I was young, I was about 9 or 10 years old, and I went into a grocery store with my mom, and fate would have it that 2 big guys with guns came in and held up the grocery store. And you never know how you're going to react in those situations. You think, I'm going to be tough and I'm going to, you know, and in this situation, I was quite young, I couldn't stop laughing. And my nervous response to the whole situation was laughter. And this guy with a huge, you know, shotgun barrel comes up to my forehead with a gun and tells my mom to shut this kid up, otherwise he'll blow my head off. And in that moment, you would think, I go, oh gosh, I need to stop laughing, but it made it worse.
Yeah.
So what's that all about?
Well, it's about that kind of fight, flight, and freeze response. The thing is that we can understand how it works. We can have those mechanisms in place, but actually we also need to have a healthy respect for the fact that it is a bit unpredictable. And if you're quite young, you know, you hadn't been exposed to those kind of situations before, and therefore your body goes into that kind of almost like hyperdrive, where it's really difficult to almost like get it back under control, and in your situation actually to stop laughing. And I think this is something that can really make us feel very embarrassed or weird. I mean, I remember a situation some years back. I was in Vienna with some mates. We were in a club. A fight broke out, and instead of stepping back from the fight, I stepped into it. And I was like, how did that happen? You know, so even with all my training, you know, sometimes that amygdala, that part of the brain that really controls that adrenaline response, can just misfire. And it's an example, it's a mechanism that's been researched a lot, particularly in terms of accidents to experienced parachute jumpers. You know, jumpers who have been, you know, have got thousands of jumps under their belt, you know, and actually something happens to their chute, and something happens in their brain and they don't pull the second chute. So there is something that can happen in the brain that we need to be mindful of and have a healthy respect for, and hopefully in less dramatic circumstances than forgetting to open the second chute. But when we do like step into a fight or start laughing, that we've got the experience, that we've got the training to bring ourselves back and out, back into more safety. And it's interesting, in, you know, I think particularly in terms of kind of when we go into laughter or things like that, an aspect of our kit that we often don't recognize as part of our kit is our psychology. And there is this whole thing about the psychology of survival. And so really getting, you know, we get curious about, you know, different caliber rifles, about this kind of knife, that kind of knife, or this kind. I mean, I've got my heart set on a really cool type of axe from Sweden. You know, I'm saving up for it because it's such a cool axe. You know, so we can get really geeky about our stuff. but actually getting really geeky about who we are. What kind of psychology do I have? What are my behavioral patterns? Where do I tip into kind of unhelpful stuff? And how do I find my way back? So, you know, just like we would map any terrain external to us, like if we're, you know, lost in the woods, we start by mapping out, okay, where's there a stream or a river? Where's potential shelter? Mapping our own internal terrain becomes part of, as well, building that resilience, because resilience is just as much of an inside job as it is an outside job. So that's something I think is important to have a healthy respect for, and that's in a way where we can build our agility, that we are as agile in our psychology as we are in our bodies or with our kit.
Yeah.
The final point I think here, which is again the training component really plays a part, is that how much effort we put into doing anything. So often when we're learning things for the first time, we put a lot of effort, like, you know, I did martial arts, you know, there's a lot of effort into some of the movements. So with the more practice, we can do the same results, but we can really tone down the effort. And when you're in a survival situation, effort is key, because any effort costs you physical resources, psychological resources. And if you can save on that, if you can be frugal, particularly with your internal resources and physical resources, you can stay in that situation for so much longer. So I think that's another reason to really get into that training, practice resilience, almost like you go to boot camp to, you know, develop your physical muscle power, go to kind of resilience boot camp and design that program for yourself.
Yeah, very, very helpful. Thor, thank you so much for this invaluable information today. And for those of you who are watching, if you're interested in additional resources and information, please click on the link below. And Thor, we have another video series together. So for those of you interested, stay tuned for that next video.